Rengoku is the strongest Hashira. Yeah, I said it. And before the Demon Slayer power scalers enter the comments with calculations, rankings, breathing forms, speed comparisons, manga panels, and a full PowerPoint presentation explaining why I'm wrong, just hear me out. I'm not saying Rengoku is physically the strongest Hashira. I'm not saying he would beat every other Hashira in a fight. That's not what I mean by strength, because after everything I've watched in Demon Slayer so far, there is something about the Flame Hashira that still makes me look at this man differently. His willpower, his mentality, his sense of responsibility, and his ability to stand by what he believed even when he knew it could cost him his life. That's strength. And honestly, I'm still angry that they killed this man so damn early. Come on, man. We barely got Rengoku. You introduce the Flame Hashira, give this man one of the strongest personalities in the entire series, show us flame breathing, show us what he's capable of, give him one of the best fights in Demon Slayer. And then you kill him? Just like that? Nah, man. I understand why his death was important. I understand what it did for Tanjiro. I understand what it meant for the story. I understand all of that. I'm still angry because look at the potential this man had. And maybe I'm biased because I have always had this obsession with fire abilities. There's just something about fire. If somebody controls water, okay, that's nice. Wind, beautiful. But when somebody starts controlling fire, automatically I'm expecting nonsense. I want destruction. I want power. And then you give the Fire Hashira all this potential and barely allow me to enjoy the man before sending him to the afterlife. That's painful. And what makes it worse is his fight with Akaza. I've watched Tanjiro and Gyu Tomioka fight Akaza later, and yes, that fight was incredible. But personally, Rengoku versus Akaza still hits differently for me. That fight was something else. Rengoku had already been through the entire Mugen Train situation. He had passengers to protect, Tanjiro was injured, everybody was exhausted, and then Upper Rank 3 casually appears. Akaza. And immediately, Akaza recognizes something. Rengoku is strong. Not average strong, not this guy goes to the gym strong. Akaza looks at Rengoku and basically sees somebody whose potential he doesn't want to see wasted by being human, because that's how Akaza thinks. Humans get old, humans get injured, humans eventually die, demons regenerate, demons can continue fighting and improving for generations. So Akaza gives Rengoku an opportunity. Become a demon. Think about what that actually means. Rengoku doesn't have to die. His injuries can regenerate, he can continue training, he can become even stronger. He could potentially spend hundreds of years mastering his abilities. And Rengoku says no, not eventually. Not after thinking about it for 30 minutes. No. Anyway, Rengoku refuses. And that's where you begin to understand why I call this man strong. Because it's very easy to talk about principles when your principles aren't costing you anything. It's easy to say what you believe when you're comfortable. It's easy to say you'd never compromise when nobody is offering you something you desperately need. Rengoku was offered his life. All he had to do was abandon what he believed, and he refused. Then the fight begins, properly. And this is where I have one criticism of Rengoku, because brother, at some point, analyze something. Akaza is regenerating. Rengoku damages him. He regenerates. Rengoku attacks again. Akaza regenerates again. Rengoku pushes harder. Akaza keeps matching him. And Rengoku's answer seems to be more power. It's not working. More flames. Still not working. More power. My brother, relax for 2 seconds and look at what this man is doing. And this is one thing I genuinely respect about Tanjiro. Tanjiro can be 2 seconds away from death, and this guy is still analyzing. Why did the demon move like that? Why did my attack fail? What did he sense? What's the pattern? Where's the weakness? How do I get around this? The guy will be bleeding from places I didn't even know human beings could bleed from, and he's still conducting research. And that's eventually important against Akaza. Later, when Tanjiro and Gyu Tomioka fight him, Tanjiro starts understanding something about Akaza that Rengoku never had the opportunity to figure out. Akaza's compass needle allows him to sense fighting spirit and use it to respond to his opponents. Tanjiro eventually figures out how important that is and reaches the selfless state, suppressing his fighting spirit and making himself much harder for Akaza to read. Now imagine if Rengoku had understood that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Rengoku definitely kills Akaza, because even later, Akaza proves that simply cutting off his head isn't necessarily enough to put this guy down. Akaza is ridiculous. But if Rengoku had figured out what Tanjiro figured out later, I genuinely believe he would have had a real chance, because power wasn't Rengoku's biggest problem. Information was. He was fighting an opponent whose ability he didn't completely understand. And instead of having time to study that ability, he had to figure everything out while protecting injured people and trying not to die. So I'm not calling Rengoku stupid. Far from it. But there is a lesson there. Sometimes adding more strength to a problem isn't the answer. Sometimes you need to understand the problem first, because if 100% effort isn't working, blindly giving 100% doesn't automatically solve anything. Sometimes you need to stop, observe, understand, then attack the actual weakness. Unfortunately, Rengoku didn't have that luxury, and eventually, Akaza lands the attack that changes everything. Rengoku is mortally wounded. And even then, this man refuses to stop. That's where the fight stops being about power for me. Rengoku knows he's dying, Akaza knows he's dying, the sun is coming up, Akaza needs to escape, and Rengoku still holds him there. Think about the mentality required for that. Your body is finished. You've taken a fatal wound, the demon in front of you can regenerate, you can't. And somehow you're still trying to keep him there long enough for the sunlight to kill him. Akaza eventually tears himself free and escapes, and I was angry. I'm not even going to pretend. Akaza was supposed to die there, man. I wanted Rengoku to get that victory so badly, but Rengoku didn't technically leave that battlefield without accomplishing something massive. Nobody on that train died because of him. The people behind him survived. The younger demon slayers survived. He completed the responsibility he gave himself. And while this man is literally dying, he's still encouraging Tanjiro. That's the part that got me. Because some people become unbearable when they have a headache. This man has a hole through his body, and somehow he's comforting everybody else. That's insane willpower. And once you understand Rengoku's childhood, his mentality becomes even more impressive, because Rengoku didn't exactly grow up in some perfect happy family where everybody constantly told him how amazing he was. His mother, Ruka, was incredibly important to him. And she taught him something that basically became the foundation of his entire life. If you're born strong, your strength isn't simply something you use for yourself. You have a responsibility to protect people who are weaker than you. That lesson stayed with him. Unfortunately, his mother died when Rengoku was still young, and his father, Shinjiro, did not handle everything well. This man had once been the Flame Hashira himself. He was powerful, experienced, respected. But after becoming disillusioned and losing his wife, he became bitter, withdrawn, and heavily dependent on alcohol. And Rengoku had to grow up around that. Instead of receiving constant encouragement from his father, he was often dismissed. His efforts were belittled. His ambitions weren't given the support you'd expect from somebody who had once walked the exact same path. And this is where Rengoku becomes psychologically interesting to me, because he had two completely different examples sitting in front of him. His father showed him what grief could do to a person. His mother showed him what strength should be used for. And Rengoku chose his mother. That's powerful, because people love saying their childhood made them who they are. And yes, childhood matters. Parents matter. Trauma matters. Environment matters. But Rengoku demonstrates something else. You still have choices. His father's bitterness could have become his bitterness. His father's hopelessness could have become his hopelessness. His father's emotional distance could have turned Rengoku into somebody equally cold. Instead, look at this guy. He's loud, he's energetic, he's encouraging, he's confident, he's protective. Sometimes he's so positive that I'm wondering what exactly this man's blood type is, because where is all this energy coming from? But that's Rengoku. And he doesn't only live that way for himself. Look at how he treats his younger brother, Senjiro. Rengoku could have passed the same emotional damage downward. That's how these things usually continue. Somebody gets treated badly by their father, then grows up and treats the next person badly because that's all they know. Rengoku doesn't do that. He encourages Senjiro. He protects him emotionally. He becomes the kind of older brother he himself probably needed. That's strength. And that's why I don't care if somebody shows me a ranking tomorrow and tells me Rengoku isn't number one. Fine. Maybe somebody is faster, maybe somebody has better technique, maybe somebody has greater physical strength, maybe another Hashira would defeat him. That's not my argument. Because strength isn't only about how much damage you can cause. Sometimes strength is about how much responsibility you're willing to carry because you're capable of carrying it. That's what Rengoku understood. And that's also why Akaza's offer matters so much. Akaza represents almost the complete opposite philosophy. To Akaza, strength is something worth preserving for its own sake. Become stronger, fight stronger opponents, continue improving, escape human weakness, escape aging, escape death. Rengoku sees strength differently. If his strength can't protect other people, then what's the point? That's why becoming a demon would violate everything his mother taught him. Yes, he could become more powerful, but he'd lose the reason he wanted power in the first place. That's why his refusal matters. And that's one of the biggest lessons I take from Rengoku. Having power and having purpose are not the same thing. You can become incredibly talented, you can become rich, you can become physically strong, you can become successful. But what exactly are you doing with it? Rengoku's mother gave him an answer while he was still a child. If you've been given more, use some of it to protect people who have less. And there's another lesson. Don't allow somebody else's bitterness to become your personality. Rengoku loved his father, but he didn't have to become his father. That's important. You can understand why somebody became bitter without copying them. You can sympathize with somebody's pain without inheriting their worldview. Your parents can influence you without determining exactly who you become. Rengoku proves that. But there's also something I wouldn't copy from Rengoku blindly. Courage doesn't mean you should always keep pushing forward without analyzing the situation. That's where Tanjiro balances this lesson beautifully. Rengoku teaches us commitment. Tanjiro teaches us adaptation. Rengoku says, keep going. Tanjiro reminds us to keep thinking while we're going, because sometimes the bravest thing isn't pushing harder. Sometimes it's admitting this approach isn't working and changing it. That's probably the one thing I wish Rengoku had been able to do against Akaza. Step back, observe, understand what Akaza was actually responding to, find the weakness, then attack. But again, I'm judging the fight with information Rengoku simply didn't have at the time. And ultimately, his job wasn't even just to defeat Akaza. His job was to protect everyone behind him. And he did that. That's why his death still hurts. Because I wanted more. I wanted more Rengoku fights. I wanted to see how much stronger he could become. I wanted to see flame breathing pushed even further. I wanted to see him fighting beside the other Hashira when everything eventually went completely insane. I wanted to see what Rengoku looked like after several more major battles. Instead, Demon Slayer basically introduced one of its coolest characters, gave us a taste of what he could do, and said, "That's enough for you." No, it wasn't enough. And yes, I know that's partly why his death works. If Rengoku had survived everything, maybe we wouldn't remember that moment the same way. His death permanently changes Tanjiro. It shows us just how terrifying the upper ranks actually are. And most importantly, Rengoku dies exactly according to the philosophy he lived by. He protected people weaker than himself. He refused to abandon his humanity. He refused to betray his principles for survival. And when his body couldn't continue anymore, he used his final moments to encourage the people who would continue after him. That's why I call Rengoku the strongest Hashira. Not because some official ranking says so, not because he can bench press more than everybody, not because I think he'd automatically beat every Hashira in a fight. I call him the strongest because when everything that normally gives a person strength was being taken away from him, his body, his future, his life, he still didn't lose himself. Akaza could destroy his body. He couldn't change his mind. And maybe that's the strongest thing about Rengoku. His mother taught him what strength was supposed to mean. His father showed him what could happen when pain consumes you. Rengoku looked at both paths and chose who he wanted to become. And even though I'm still angry that this man died so damn early, I think that's exactly why I'll never forget him. Because Rengoku didn't need hundreds of episodes to show us who he was. He showed us in one fight, and somehow, That was enough to make his death hurt like we'd known him for the entire series.